Cybersecurity insurance is a policy designed to help companies recover from the damages and the consequences of a cyber attack. The policy coverage is split into three parts: event management, liability, and financial loss. Event management is the costs and expenses of IT, legal, and public relations experts to help a company recover from a cyber attack. Financial loss covers the business interruption and the extortion demands against a business after a cyber event. And liability is the liability a company has to its customers or other stakeholders as a result of that customer information being lost or stolen. Cyber insurance is different to other insurance policies because it's got a far-reaching area of coverage. The only similar property insurance to cyber insurance would be property insurance, whereby every business has a risk of its physical premise or its contents being damaged by natural perils such as earth, wind, fire, earthquake, whereas cyber insurance is also applicable to every business, but at non-physical perils such as cyber attacks, DDoS attacks, losing of data, and also extortion demands. Companies need cyber insurance because the uncertainty of a cyber attack and the potential fallout and consequential losses which could follow a cyber incident. A company may not have the resources and expertise to deal with a cyber attack in-house. By having a cyber insurance policy, companies can leverage from an insurer's global relationships and significant balance sheet to help it, in the event of a cyber attack, recover and restore its operations. Data Protection Act 1998 there is no requirement at the date of making this video for a compulsory notification to customers in the event of a breach. Whereas GDPR, there is a new requirement for a compulsory notification within 72 hours of a company losing its customers' data that a supervisory authority in the state or nation or country whereby the company is domiciled must notify. There are other differences with the GDPR and with the Data Protection Act. Namely, customers' consent must be sought when holding their data by companies who are processing customers' information. There's two types of processing now. Previously, there was just one recognition, but in GDPR, there is controlling and processing. Finally, there's also the fines and penalties. In the previous DPA, or Data Protection Act 1998, there was a maximum fine of £500,000. However, with GDPR, that's increasing significantly to 4% of global turnover. So for major fines, such as the one Carphone warehouse or the one which TalkTalk suffered a few years ago, where they suffered just £500,000 of loss, in the future, that could relate to 50, 60, 70 million pounds in fines. These changes in regulation are going to have a great impact on people's purchasing of cyber insurance, but also for insurers in managing the new risks of this regulation. Well, can you insure the risk of being fined, you may ask? In fact, it's actually up to the courts to decide whether a fine is insurable. And at the current time, there's no precedent in the UK courts to prove whether this will be accepted or not. But in other regulatory territories and jurisdictions, the courts have deemed fines not to be insurable because it's against public interest. However, we sometimes think of the scenario just like driving a car and getting a traffic speeding ticket. What happens if you are not to blame for a cyber attack and the controls and processes of the business are being followed and implemented as best practice determines, but you still suffer a major breach? Now the courts, would they fine the organisation for this, and would they fine them as much as they should have fined them if they weren't following those practices, and whether that type of fine might be insurable? Only time will tell. Cyber insurance is a really important tool for companies who have suffered a cyber attack. It allows companies to access best-in-class incident responders in IT, legal and public relations services. Let's think of the scenario like WannaCry last year in 2017, where a large number of organisations across the world were impacted in a very short space of time by a malware attack which encrypted the computers and made a lot of the data inaccessible. What do companies do at this point? Well, with a cyber insurance policy to hand, the first thing to do is to call up the event manager or the claims team of the insurer. The insurer's claims team would give advice as to how to respond and how to react to this event. First, they would recommend an incident responder who's got forensic investigatory expertise. Forensic investigators are able to identify through the computer systems and networks of an organisation and the data logs how a cyber attack may have happened. But they may also be able to provide advice as to how to recover from a cyber attack or how to restore or save some of the data which may be impacted. But it's not just about a data or the computer systems. A company is reliant upon its customers and the interaction with its customers. And the customer is equally reliant upon the business being able to operate. So what does a company do when it cannot operate, when it's paralysed by a cyber attack? Well, first of all, it needs to get that IT, that forensic investigation, but also it needs some legal expertise as well, both from a civil perspective, but also in a regulatory perspective. How do you speak to the regulators? How do you notify the regulators? How do you notify the customers? Do you need to set up a call credit monitoring service or a call centre to host concerned questions from customers? This is what we call event management, a vital part of cyber insurance and something post a WannaCry type attack, which I'm sure a similar event will happen in the future, is a sort of coverage which is really important and essential to companies to have. The other two parts of coverage, financial loss and liability, focus on potential business interruption as a result of not being able to access data and the systems of the company, but also the actual extortion demand. Believe it or not, cyber insurance will pay for an extortion demand from a hacker which is locked or crypto-locked the data or the systems from operating, and insurers will approve the payment of these demands if it means that the insured or the policyholder can get their systems back up and running again. Finally, they may find that for the weeks and months after a cyber attack, they could have a liability to their customers because the customers weren't able to access their data. They may have suffered some form of a loss from this event, and they may bring a claim, a joint action claim against the company. If that's the case, then cyber insurance will help defend those types of claims, but also pay any damages as a result from them. And finally, the fines and penalties. If, as a result of a cyber attack, they suffer fines and penalties, then the cyber insurers, where insurable by law, can cover them. When purchasing cybersecurity insurance, a company must think about its operations and its controls and its processes. Is it ready to purchase cybersecurity insurance? Just like going to a household insurer, asking to insure your house or your car, if you haven't got an MOT or you haven't got a gas safety certificate, the insurers may question whether they want to insure you as a risk. If you can show a good, healthy level of cybersecurity and processes and controls to prevent a cyber attack, you can really get the most beneficial terms from the insurers. That's why we recommend all our clients to consider Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus. These are government-backed, industry-led cybersecurity accreditations and certifications for organisations throughout the UK and soon beyond to provide themselves with a clear level of cybersecurity maturity. You show that to an insurer and the insurers will understand your maturity in this space and reward you with extra cover and lower premiums. I believe the cybersecurity insurance industry could work more closely with the technical assurance industry by having an understanding of how the services from each side work and operate. At the moment, the insurers work with small panels of incident responders and technical assurance providers in order to see what best controls and processes can be put in place to prevent cyber attack from happening. For the technical assurance industry, it's vital that both sides of pre-event and post-event are considered when looking at cyber insurance partnerships, because insurers really do value pre-event mitigation of potential risks to lower the actual risk and help the insurers understand what they're insuring. So what we've started to implement is an initiative where in every policy purchased, a 5% or 10% of the premium is allocated to pre-event technical assurance services. It means that the policyholder can go to the technical assurance company and allocate a percentage of their premium to getting remedial and mitigating and preventative procedures, technical controls, or processes to help them manage the event of a cyber attack. This is also critical when a cyber event happens. That technical assurance provider will have an understanding of the environment of the company in question and will be able to respond better because most likely they'll already be contracted with that company. We had an excellent workshop with CRESS and with some government organisations, government entities, as well as representatives from Lloyd's of London and some of the largest insurance companies in the world, alongside the technical assurance and incident response community. The purpose of the workshop was to explore how we can collaborate together and we can make a more unified solution and environment and community for the responders and the insurers to work together. 3 things I'd recommend an organisation to consider when they're looking at their own business are: I would recommend a business look at their information security, processes and controls. 2, look at your data, understand your data, understand the data you have on all your devices, on all your network. And number 3, make sure you've got some good responders to hand to call in the event of a problem, and make sure you're contracted with them, because the worst thing is delaying an emergency because you haven't contracted with a vendor to help you in that situation.